No, Cookie, I don't think Kamala Harris became black at any point. Oh, hey everybody. Welcome back to JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club because I didn't read Fight Club. We've got an exciting 2-book episode this month, but before then, as always, we have to get to our beverage of the month, which, once again, I still think no repeats in the 2+ years we've been doing this. But this month, it's Diet Mountain Dew. The victim in the beverage devil's triangle between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. I used this for a prop in a recent video where I interviewed, as Chris Wallace, I interviewed J.D. Vance's couch. So if you haven't watched it on my YouTube channel, congratulations. You're like most of my fans. Now, this month, like I said, 2 books. Last month, I said ambitiously I might try to get to 3 books. I couldn't do that, but I got to 2. I'm currently reading Haiti, The Aftershocks of History. I will probably have that done by Labor Day, but obviously that would be too late for an August book review episode. So we've still got double the normal amount of books this month. And the first book is Jim Henson, the biography. Not the most creative title for one of the most creative men of the 20th century. But I wanted to read this book. I've had this book. I said to my uncle probably 15 years ago, why isn't there a biography of Jim Henson? He's sort of a one of one. I didn't use that term at the time. But I was like, I mean, for a guy with that much creative, unique impact that hasn't really been replicated, why isn't there a biography of this guy? Because he died very, very early in 1990, 53 years old. And obviously had a very profound impact on my childhood, like millions of other kids of multiple generations. And then in 2013, a biography did come out. And I didn't get it in hard copy, but I bought it as soon as it was available in paperback in like 2015. And just 9 years later, here I am getting to it finally, because there's a documentary on Disney Plus about him, and it was nominated for an Emmy. And I said, well, remember what the theme of this podcast is, the mantra, if you will. Books, they're like documentaries for smart people. Well, since I'm a smart person, I said better read the book I've had for 9 years before I indulge in the proletariat plebeian documentary to get my Jim Henson information. So I read this, and I'm going to read one quote from the back because I think it really sums it up. My rivals for book review supremacy, the New York Times, said, an exhaustive work that is never exhausting, a credit both to Jones's brisk style and to Henson's exceptional life. Brian J. Jones tells the story of how Henson turned a quaint art form into an entertainment empire. Well, there it is, folks. That's the summary. You know, obviously me and the New York Times Book Review are in sort of a real Jordan-LeBron rivalry for who does the most authoritative, best book reviews on the planet. And I'll give it to them on this one. That was before I got in the book review game, okay? But that is a perfect summary of this book. It is encyclopedic, but because of Jim Henson's kind of brilliance and the unique figure he is in sort of entertainment history, I'm never sort of sitting there going, oh geez, this is too... Cookie Bear just knocked over some clothing because she's wearing a cone because she can't be trusted to live her life like a normal dog. Anyway, guys, I had to get that out because otherwise you'd see the expression of my face get more and more tense throughout the episode as I held it in. So, Jim Henson, a couple things I'll just highlight in this. One of my favorite tidbits was he got in early into sort of like TV had just emerged when he was like a teenager. So he gets in on the ground floor of like TV and puppetry. Puppetry obviously existed long before, but I don't even want to go through all the unique things that he did, but he was like the perfect man at the perfect time. You know, that's when true epic historical genius comes together. It's sort of like at the person with the exact skill set and genius and the right time in history. That's when you get sort of landmark figures in entertainment. And one of my favorite early tidbits of his, he went to the University of Maryland, and by the time he was already like a freshman at Maryland, he was already like working on TV shows. And he basically was like taking a puppetry class, but basically knew more than the professor in the class. And he had to take a year off because he was so busy with TV work. But when he graduated, I guess he was like a fifth-year senior when he graduated from University of Maryland, he drove his own Rolls Royce to graduation, which I thought was awesome. And it wasn't even like he was some sort of showboat. It was just like he liked cars, and he had the money already to buy himself like like think of an influencer graduating from college today who was making millions on OnlyFans or TikTok, but instead also add incredible talent and justified wealth. Then you get Jim Henson. If I were to describe Jim Henson simply for everybody, I'm sure you're familiar, but after reading this book, 50% touched by God, 40% Bo Burnham, who I do think should play him in the movie. Not that they're dead ringers, but he was a tall, lanky guy, like 6'1", 6'2". Bo Burnham is like 6'5", 6'6", but whatever, you can make it make sense. He still seemed tall to everybody around him because he was so thin and lanky. So 50% touched by God, 40% Bo Burnham, 10% Cookie keeps bumping into me, which you can't see. That's how much of a professional I am. This is like Jim Henson in reverse, where he would be off camera working the puppets, and instead I'm on camera ignoring the puppets. You, Cookie. Anyway, 50% touched by God, 40% Bo Burnham, 10%, wait for it, this guy, J.O. Cauvin. And I'm going to read to you a passage that made me go, I knew I was a genius when I read this. So Jim Henson he was a very experimental filmmaker. Like, he was doing the puppets and the characters. I'm telling you, this is no shot at the documentary, which was very good. This book, if you liked the Jim Henson documentary, or you're a Jim Henson fan or anything, I really recommend this book. It's like 490 pages that just goes by because each chapter doesn't feel like, oh, another thing. It's more like, oh yeah, this. Oh my God, that's how he learned to do that, and that's when he met Frank Oz, and that's it. It's if you like Jim Henson at all or any of his work, I highly recommend the book. Absolutely. But he was also sort of an avant-garde experimental filmmaker, and this is the kind of shit, like, I'm glad I didn't see it first because it sounded like weird stuff to me. But hey, this is geniuses sometimes think and make things that are different than other people want. But it was this thing called The Cube, and its response to The Cube was mixed, and viewers and critics either loved it or hated it, with very little middle ground. A dramatic highlight of the season, proclaimed critic Ben Gross in the New York Daily News, while other viewers thought it excellent, provocative, or a challenge and a pleasure, many disagreed. The people who wrote it must be weird, one viewer wrote flatly. Variety groaned that it must have been intended for what is called egghead ghetto time. Meanwhile, the lower strata of TV viewers must still be wondering what it was all about. One viewer, a Mr. Dion from California, who likely didn't consider himself part of the lower strata, fired off an angry, rambling letter complaining haughtily that the most disciplined attention I could give The Cube was a belch from the grave of Marcus Aurelius, occasioned, I might add, by the dead weight of its own dust caving in on itself. 2 weeks later came Jim's one-sentence response. Dear Mr. Dion, what the fuck are you talking about? Yours truly, Jim Henson. And that's how you become something beyond a goat, a greatest of all time. He's a mega goat. He is a next tier of goat after that. Because for everybody here who says, JL, you're too mean to people on YouTube who don't like your stuff or don't get your stuff or try to make suggestions, this is my answer to you. Jim Henson, who made iconic family entertainment, loved kids, loved making the world a better place. Even he had his limits for stupid comments. So Jim Henson, from one goat to another, great book, great life, cut way too short, but really just a great biography and just everything I wanted and more when I bought the book almost a decade ago. So don't get it and wait a decade. Get it and read it, within 6 months to a year of when you get it. And our next book is, as I promised last month, I decided because I'm an elite piece of shit, the New York Times released their top 100 books of the 21st century so far. And I realized, though I had read several of them, I probably have read and owned around 20, give or take a book or two on the list, which I thought was pretty good for just a working man's book critic. But I have 6 books as of last month that I hadn't read yet that were on the list that I had purchased. And so I said, well, let's start reading one of those a month as well. Get through the portion that I own. So the first one I chose was I think ranked in the top 20 on the list. And it's a book by Paul Beatty called The Sellout. And a woman, actually, sidebar, black women love books. And I'm saying that because, and old Jewish women. The people who comment to me constantly on my books are black women under 40 and Jewish women over 65. Like when I'm in Starbucks, it's either an old Jewish woman or on a bus going, how do you like that book? I liked it. Or it's my local Starbucks with, if I'm reading, The Warmth of Other Suns or The Sellout, just going, I love that book. And I go, all right. So white men, black men, where's the love of books? Okay? It can't just be me, old Jewish women, and young black women. So let's step up our game, everybody who's not me or an old Jewish woman or a young black woman. Okay? Get a library card, start reading, join the party. And if either of those demographics are what you like, more reason to start reading. If you're sitting there going, well, I'm an elderly Jewish man whose wife just died, I'd like to get back out there, books. Or if you're a guy who's like, I love young black women, just check my internet search history. Get on the books, folks. See, there's practical reasons to read, not just for the mind. So The Sellout, this woman actually came up to me and she said, oh my God, he's my professor. And then I was like Googling, I was like, oh, Columbia. If I had known, I didn't know where he taught, but she was Columbia. And I was like, oh, all right, Columbia, good for you. Don't protest. So The Sellout is full of, let's just say, non-PC language, but NPR.org referred to it as a comic masterpiece. And I did start laughing from page 1. What I would describe this book, just to give a summary, if you saw the movie Sorry to Bother You, which was what was his name? Boots Riley, who did the show. I haven't watched the show, I Am Virgo on Amazon, but it's a very sort of surrealist critique and satire of sort of black life in America. And this is like it's very satirical. It doesn't feel, it's obviously things are based in real life, but it's obviously a satire as you're reading it. It's very funny. I think I'm pretty culturally literate across a lot of cultures and genres. So I feel like I picked up on 90% of the references, both black and otherwise. Some of you watching this might get a little lost in it, but I do like the fact that it felt, because I sometimes wonder, what is the modern literature? We all know books and fiction, but it's like literature sometimes feels like something for English class, that if it was written after 1948, it's no longer literature, it's just books or fiction. This felt like modern literature, where there was lessons and levels to it. But I laughed plenty. I enjoyed it. It was not a very tough or long read, under 300 pages. And it won the Man Booker Prize, which is one of those literary awards, and it was a National Book Critics Circle Award winner. And this is one of those books that I think where the highfalutin critics meet, maybe not the common man, let's be honest, but meet the regular or decent reader. As opposed to, I love this book, and then you read it, you go, this stunk, just as a regular person. But I enjoyed it. I have no passage because there's really not a page goes by with heavy N-word usage. And he uses the hard R, which I thought was an interesting choice. It had to have been a literary choice to use the hard R, just to maybe make it blunter or whatever. But yeah, there were no A's. There were no soft A's in this book. It was all hard R. But his father, like one of the things about it is that's really funny is his father is like this militant, pro-black guy who basically does psych experiments on him when he's a kid. And it's very funny. It's like brutal, but very funny. I enjoyed it for sure. So I recommend it. I can't, without giving away things. It's only 300 pages, so you can discover the story on your own. But he wants it's gentrification, segregation, racism, pro-black, anti-black, all these kind of themes run through the book, but it is very funny. So yeah, if you want to look impressive and get hollered at by black women at Starbucks, The Sellout. So that's it for this month, everybody. I have to go back to my day job because not enough Patreon growth. But I will say this because I'm recording this on a Monday. Usually Sunday is my time for the Lord and for books. But today, my cinematographer is off on Mondays. So I said, let's do it Monday. And that's not true. She said, can we do it Monday? And I said, fine. But don't make this a habit. So next month's books. 2 more books for next month. One, which I bought many months ago, but all of a sudden Obama put it on his books I read this summer list. Okay, Barack, stop trying to be me. He's trying to be me. Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here, which is a book that I thought was about where all my fans go when I'm in town, hoping they'll buy tickets. But it's in fact about the migrant crisis from Central and South America. It was very highly rated. I think this guy is a New Yorker writer, but that's where I heard about it. And then it got a great review in the New York Times. So I said, well, if it's written up in the New Yorker and gets a good review from the Times, it's met my two-tiered snob book criteria. So I got it. So we're going to read that this month. And in the fiction category, from the top 100 books of the 21st century so far, a book that I've also had for a little less than the Jim Henson book, but I said, finally, it's time to get on this. The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay Pfeiffer. And it was a National Book Award finalist. It was a top 10 book of 2018, see? And it came in paperback in like 2020, so I could probably wait 5 more years before this really had to be read. But it involves, it's fiction and it involves AIDS. So we'll see. Feels like a real pick-me-up. So The Great Believers, Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here for next month. A lot of shows coming up next month, live shows, so I hope you can make them. And I've been putting up a lot of videos on YouTube, so if you're not getting those on your Patreon feed, it's because I don't post them there. But be sure to check the YouTube channel. The conventions were a big boom to my following, so that's good. So that's it, everybody. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed these. Hope you take my recommendations to heart. And even if you don't, thanks for watching and being Patreon subscribers. And as I always say, and never more true than this month, books. They're like documentaries for smart people.